There are movies you watch and forget, and then there are movies that follow you home. The Exorcist was one of those. People fainted in theaters, others walked out, some lined up again the next day. It opened on December 26, 1973, and nothing was quite the same afterward. Today, more than 50 years later, we're going back to look at the people who made it, where they came from, what they built, and what became of them. This is what happened to the cast. After 53 years, a little background. The Exorcist was directed by William Friedkin and based on the 1971 novel by William Peter Blatty, who also wrote the screenplay. The story centers on a 12-year-old girl named Regan McNeil, who begins to change in frightening and inexplicable ways. Her mother, a successful actress working in Washington, D.C., exhausts every medical explanation before she is forced to consider something far older and more disturbing. Two Catholic priests are brought in. What follows is one of the most unsettling hours of cinema ever put on film. The movie cost approximately $12 million to make, a significant sum for the time, and went dramatically over schedule, taking more than 200 days to complete principal photography rather than the 85 originally planned. It grossed around $193 million at the domestic box office alone in its initial release, making it one of the highest-earning films of its era. It was only the second horror film ever nominated for the Academy Award for Best Picture, and it ultimately won 2 Oscars, Best Adapted Screenplay for Blatty and Best Sound. The production itself was famously troubled. Fires broke out, sets were damaged, and the schedule stretched far beyond what anyone had planned. Ellen Burstyn suffered a fractured coccyx during a scene in which the possessed Regan throws her backward. The take used in the final cut was the one where she was genuinely hurt, her pain clearly visible. Linda Blair sustained a back injury that would stay with her for years. A series of other accidents and deaths during and after production gave rise to talk of a curse, a notion the studio did little to discourage, since the mystique only added to the film's allure. Friedkin later attributed most of it to the simple reality that when you spend more than a year filming under those conditions, things inevitably go wrong. What made the film land as hard as it did was not just the imagery or the effects, it was the performances. The cast brought an uncommon seriousness to material that could have collapsed into camp, and they grounded every scene in something that felt, against all odds, human and real. The people who filled those roles came from extraordinarily varied backgrounds, and several of them were already near the top of their respective fields when filming began. 53 years have passed since that film changed horror cinema forever. Here is what happened to the cast. Ellen Burstyn, Chris McNeil. Ellen Burstyn was born Edna Ray Galooly on December 7, 1932 in Detroit, Michigan. Her childhood was difficult. Her parents divorced when she was young, and she grew up in an unstable household. She left home in her teens and worked a string of jobs before finding her way to the stage. She was a short-order cook, a model in Texas, and a dancing girl on the Jackie Gleason show in New York in the mid-1950s, where she performed under the name Erica Dean. She eventually settled on acting and made her Broadway debut in 1957 in Fair Game. Through the 1960s, she took on television and film work under the name Ellen McRae, quietly building her range and her craft. She studied under Lee Strasberg at the Actors Studio, an experience that left a deep mark on her approach to performance. And it was through that rigorous, grounded work that her voice as an actress really took shape. Her breakthrough came in Peter Bogdanovich's The Last Picture Show in 1971, for which she received her first Oscar nomination for Best Supporting Actress. 2 years later came The Exorcist, in which she played Chris McNeil, the desperate mother at the center of the story. The role required her to portray a woman unraveling in real time, frightened, exhausted, and alone, while also anchoring the entire emotional weight of the film. She was nominated for the Academy Award for Best Actress for her work, and she brought a level of naturalism to the role that made what was happening around her feel disturbingly plausible. The very next year, 1974, she starred in Martin Scorsese's Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore, a film she had actively championed, selecting Scorsese to direct and producing it herself. Her performance as the widowed single mother, Alice Hyatt, won her the Academy Award for Best Actress. That same year, she also won a Tony Award for Best Actress for the Broadway play Same Time Next Year, making her one of the very few performers in history to win an Oscar and a Tony in the same calendar year. In 2009, she completed the rare Triple Crown of acting, adding an Emmy to her collection for her guest appearance on Law & Order, Special Victims Unit. Burstyn served as the first female president of the Actors Equity Association from 1982 to 1985 and has been co-president of the Actors Studio alongside Al Pacino and Alec Baldwin since 1995. She has also taught acting for decades. The decades that followed, Alice kept her remarkably busy. She earned further Oscar nominations for Same Time Next Year in 1978, Resurrection in 1980, and a widely praised performance as a drug-addicted older woman in Darren Aronofsky's Requiem for a Dream in 2000. 6 Oscar nominations in total for a career that shows no signs of slowing. She appeared in Christopher Nolan's Interstellar in 2014, on the HBO series Big Love from 2007 to 2011, and on Netflix's House of Cards in 2016. After decades of declining to return to the franchise, Burstyn agreed to reprise her role as Chris McNeil in The Exorcist, Believer in 2023, reportedly doing so after the production agreed to fund a scholarship program at Pace University, where she teaches. As of 2026, Ellen Burstyn is 93 years old and remains one of the most distinguished actresses of her generation. Linda Blair, Regan McNeil. Linda Blair was born on January 22, 1959, in St. Louis, Missouri. Her family relocated to Connecticut when she was 2, and she began appearing in commercials and modeling as a young child in New York. By the time she was 9, she had a regular role on the daytime soap opera Hidden Faces. She was still a child, and still relatively new to film, when she auditioned for The Exorcist in 1972. She was selected from a field of approximately 600 applicants. She was 14 years old when the film was released. The role of Regan McNeil demanded things of Blair that no teenager should reasonably have been asked to endure. The physical conditions on set were brutal. The room temperature was kept extremely low to create visible breath during filming, and Blair suffered a serious back injury during one scene that would cause her lasting pain. The role also brought an avalanche of public attention that she was entirely unprepared for. Warner Brothers reportedly stationed police officers with her family around the clock for 6 months after the film's release, due to the volume and severity of threats she received from religious extremists. She won a Golden Globe for Best Supporting Actress and was nominated for the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress. The film had made her famous overnight, but fame of this particular kind is its own kind of burden. The years that followed were mixed. She starred in several high-profile television films. Born Innocent in 1974 was the highest-rated TV movie of that year, and Sarah T. Taliaferein's Portrait of a Teenage Alcoholic in 1975, and she reprised her role as Regan in Exorcist II, The Heretic in 1977. But in late 1977, she was arrested on drug-related charges, a highly publicized incident that caused significant professional damage. Her career shifted toward the low-budget exploitation and B-movie sector, including the cult films Hell Night in 1981, Chained Heat in 1983, and Savage Streets in 1984. Through the 1980s and 1990s, she kept working, appearing in guest roles on television, making a cameo in Wes Craven's Scream in 1996, and starring in a 1997 Broadway revival of Grease as Sandy's rival Rizzo. From 2000 to 2006, she hosted the Fox Family series Scariest Places on Earth, which brought her renewed mainstream visibility. What defined her life more than any acting role, though, was her commitment to animals. In 2004, she founded the Linda Blair World Heart Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to rescuing, rehabilitating, and rehoming abused and abandoned animals in the Los Angeles area. She lives and works on a 2-acre rescue sanctuary in California and has described this work as the central purpose of her adult life. She made a cameo in The Exorcist, Believer in 2023. In 2025, she disclosed that she had been diagnosed with Graves' disease in 2023 following a near-fatal thyroid storm. As of 2026, Linda Blair is 67 years old. She turned 67 in January of this year. Max von Sydow, Father Lancaster Marin. Max von Sydow was born Karl Adolf von Sydow on April 10, 1929 in Lund, Sweden. His father was a professor of folklore and ethnology at the University of Lund. His mother was a school teacher. He came to acting through school, establishing an amateur theater group after a class trip to see a production of A Midsummer Night's Dream convinced him that the stage was where he belonged. He studied at the Royal Dramatic Theatre in Stockholm from 1948 to 1951 and served in the Swedish Army before beginning his professional career. It was his collaboration with director Ingmar Bergman that made him an international figure. He appeared in 11 Bergman films over more than a decade, most famously as the medieval knight Antonius Block in The Seventh Seal in 1957, a film featuring some of cinema's most iconic imagery, including the unforgettable scene of von Sydow's knight playing chess with the figure of death. He was 27 years old when that film was released. 10 further Bergman collaborations followed, cementing his reputation as one of the most serious and commanding actors working anywhere in the world. His Hollywood crossover came with The Greatest Story Ever Told in 1965, in which he played Jesus Christ, and Hawaii the following year. He built a career that ranged freely between art house and mainstream cinema, appearing in films like The Emigrants in 1971, Flash Gordon in 1980, Conan the Barbarian in 1982, David Lynch's Dune in 1984, Woody Allen's Hannah and Her Sisters in 1986, and Minority Report in 2002. In The Exorcist, von Sydow played Father Lancaster Marin, the elderly priest who arrives to conduct the exorcism. He was only 43 at the time of filming, but aged considerably for the role through extensive makeup. The character carries an enormous gravity. Marin is a man who has confronted this particular evil before, and who knows the cost. And von Sydow brought a stillness and authority to the role that felt absolutely earned. His later career included a second Oscar nomination for Best Actor in Pele the Conqueror in 1987, a film for which Sweden submitted him as its official Oscar entry, and which is widely considered one of the finest performances of his career. He was nominated again for Best Supporting Actor for Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close in 2011. He also appeared in Star Wars: The Force Awakens in 2015, and played the Three-Eyed Raven in Game of Thrones in 2016, earning a Primetime Emmy nomination for the latter. Von Sydow was fluent in Swedish, English, French, Italian, and German, and appeared in films in multiple languages over the span of 7 decades. He became a French citizen in 2002. Max von Sydow died on March 8, 2020, at his home in Provence, France. He was 90 years old and was survived by his wife, Catherine Brelet, and 4 children. His ashes were scattered at sea. Jason Miller, Father Damien Karras. Jason Miller was born John Anthony Miller Jr. on April 22, 1939, in Queens, New York City. His family moved to Scranton, Pennsylvania when he was 2 years old, and Scranton remained his spiritual and professional home for the rest of his life. He attended St. Patrick's High School and then the University of Scranton, where he earned a degree in English and philosophy from the Jesuit institution, an education that left a clear mark on the kinds of questions his work would keep returning to. Before he was an actor, Miller was a playwright. He worked a remarkable variety of jobs in New York while writing: messenger, truck driver, welfare investigator, selling his blood on the Bowery when money ran out, and eventually broke through with a play called That Championship Season, which he had written while doing dinner theater in Texas. The play, set at a reunion of a championship high school basketball team, opened on Broadway and won the Pulitzer Prize for Drama and the Tony Award for Best Play in 1973. It was the same year The Exorcist was released. He was offered the role of Father Damien Karras, a Jesuit priest and psychiatrist wrestling with his own faltering faith at the very moment he is asked to confront what may be genuine evil. While his playwriting career was at its peak, it was his acting debut in a major film, and his performance earned him an Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actor. There is a particular rawness to his work in that film, a quality of someone genuinely working something out rather than performing for the camera. His Catholic background and his Jesuit education gave him an instinctive understanding of Karras's interior conflict, a man whose training has prepared him for the spiritual dimensions of his role as a priest, but who has quietly lost the certainty that training was meant to provide. He was offered the lead in Taxi Driver in 1976 and turned it down. He preferred the stage and specifically the theater he had helped build in Scranton. He reprised the role of Father Karras in The Exorcist 3 in 1990. He appeared in a small number of other films over the years, including Rudy in 1993, where he played Notre Dame football coach Ara Parsegian. For much of his career, he served as artistic director of the Scranton Public Theater, directing and starring in productions ranging from Blithe Spirit to The Lion in Winter. He was also the father of actor Jason Patrick and was briefly married to Linda Gleason, daughter of comedian Jackie Gleason. Jason Miller died of a heart attack on May 13, 2001, in Scranton, Pennsylvania. He was 62 years old. The city of Scranton later commissioned a bronze bust of Miller, sculpted by his longtime friend actor Paul Sorvino, which was unveiled in December of 2008. Lee J. Cobb, Lieutenant William Kinderman. Lee J. Cobb was born Leo Jacoby on December 8, 1911 in New York City. He grew up in the Bronx in a Jewish family of Russian and Romanian descent. His father was a compositor for a Yiddish-language newspaper. He was drawn to music as a young man and trained as a violinist, but a broken wrist ended that path when he was 16. He ran away from home to try his luck in Hollywood, found no work there, and returned to New York, where he began acting in radio dramas and taking classes while supporting himself where he could. He eventually joined the Manhattan-based Group Theater in 1935, one of the most influential theater companies in American history, which also counted Elia Kazan, Lee Strasberg, Stella Adler, and others among its members. His stage work through the late 1930s and 1940s established him as a serious and commanding presence, and in 1949, he created what many consider his defining stage role, Willie Loman, in the original Broadway production of Arthur Miller's Death of a Salesman, which opened under the direction of Elia Kazan and is still considered one of the landmark productions in American theater history. His film career ran in parallel. He earned 2 Academy Award nominations for Best Supporting Actor, for On the Waterfront in 1954 and The Brothers Karamazov in 1958, and appeared in 12 Angry Men in 1957, where his portrayal of the explosive Juror Number 3 is one of the film's most memorable performances. On television, he was a fixture as Judge Henry Garth in the Western series The Virginian from 1962 to 1966. His role in The Exorcist as Lieutenant William Kinderman the investigator quietly circling the McNeil house as he tries to piece together what happened to Burke Dennings, was one of his final major film roles. Kinderman is an unusual character in the film, arriving from the outside world with no awareness of what he is approaching, and Cobb brought a warmth and a dry intelligence to the part that made the detective feel like someone you might actually know. There is a gentleness to the character that sits in interesting contrast with the darkness surrounding him. Kinderman likes movies, makes small talk, and seems genuinely fond of the people he is investigating. Cobb played him as someone who senses that something is profoundly wrong and has no category to put it in. In the years between his work in The Exorcist and his death, Cobb also appeared in several Italian crime thrillers, the polizioteschi genre that was popular in European cinema in the mid-1970s. Two of his final films were released posthumously. Lee J. Cobb died of a heart attack on February 11, 1976, in Woodland Hills, California. He was 64 years old. He was buried at Mount Sinai Memorial Park Cemetery in Los Angeles and was posthumously inducted into the American Theater Hall of Fame in 1981. Kitty Wynn, Sharon Spencer. Kitty Wynn was born Catherine Tupper Wynn on February 21, 1943, in Washington, D.C. Her father was a United States Army officer, which meant the family moved frequently during her childhood. She spent time in the United States, England, Germany, China, India, and Japan before completing her education. Her mother was the stepdaughter of General George C. Marshall, the wartime Army Chief of Staff, and later Secretary of State and Secretary of Defense. It was an extraordinary family background for someone who would go on to play quiet, largely unnoticed supporting roles in two of the most discussed films of the 1970s. She studied acting at Centenary Junior College and then at Boston University, graduating in 1966. She made her Broadway debut in 1969 in The Three Sisters and quickly established herself as a serious stage actress. She also played Ophelia in Joe Papp's acclaimed New York Shakespeare in the Park production of Hamlet, alongside Stacy Keach and James Earl Jones. Her film debut came with Jerry Schatzberg's The Panic in Needle Park in 1971, in which she played a heroin addict opposite a young Al Pacino. The performance won her the Best Actress award at the 1971 Cannes Film Festival, the most prestigious prize in international cinema. It was a stunning debut, and Premiere Magazine later ranked it as the 76th greatest film performance of all time in their 2006 list of the 100 greatest screen performances. In The Exorcist, she played Sharon Spencer, Chris McNeil's assistant and Regan's tutor, the person closest to Regan in the household aside from her mother, and the one who witnesses the horror at the most intimate proximity. It was not a showy role, but Wynn played it with a steady authenticity that kept her grounded in the story's increasingly surreal circumstances. She reprised the role of Sharon in Exorcist II, the heretic in 1977. After that, Wynn stepped away. Her final film was Mirrors in 1978. She spent much of her subsequent career in theater and retired from acting not long after. She returned briefly in 1983 to play Cordelia in a television production of King Lear for KCET, and then stepped away from the public eye entirely for nearly 3 decades. In 2011, she came out of retirement to play the lead in The Last Romance at the San Jose Repertory Theater, for which she received a nomination for Best Actress from the San Francisco Bay Area Theater Critics Circle. As of 2026, Kitty Wynn is 83 years old and has largely remained private since her brief return to the stage in 2011. Jack McGowran, Burke Dennings. Jack McGowran was born John Joseph McGowran on October 13, 1918, in the Ranelagh area of Dublin, Ireland. Before he ever became an actor, he worked as an insurance clerk, a life that would have suited some people just fine, and which suited him not at all. He found the stage through the Abbey Players in Dublin, And it was there that he began to build the reputation that would eventually make him one of the most respected Irish actors of his generation. He became most celebrated for his interpretations of the work of Samuel Beckett, the Irish playwright whose plays, filled with dark absurdism and oblique silences, demanded a very particular kind of performer. McGowan was that performer. He recorded an LP called McGowan Speaking Beckett in 1966 to coincide with Beckett's 60th birthday, and won an Obie Award for Best Performance by an Actor in 1970 and 1971 for the off-Broadway piece, McGowan in the Works of Beckett. Beckett wrote his television play, A Joe, specifically for McGowan. Their collaboration was one of the most productive artistic partnerships in modern Irish theater. His film career was substantial as well. He appeared in John Ford's The Quiet Man in 1952, David Lean's Dr. Zhivago in 1965, Tony Richardson's Tom Jones in 1963, and in 2 films for Roman Polanski, Cul-de-sac in 1966 and The Fearless Vampire Killers in 1967, for which Polanski created the role of Professor Abronsius especially for him. He was also a member of the Royal Shakespeare Company. In The Exorcist, McGowan played Burke Dennings, the alcoholic film director working on Chris McNeil's movie, a character whose boozy irreverence makes him the most casually human figure in the story, right up until he becomes the demon's first victim. It was his last film role. While still in New York performing in The Plow and the Stars shortly after completing work on The Exorcist, McGowan became ill with influenza and its complications. He died on January 30th, 1973, at the age of 54, nearly a year before the film he had just finished would be released in theaters. He was survived by his wife and daughter. The Exorcist was dedicated to his memory. It is worth pausing, looking at these names and faces across 53 years, to consider what this film was actually asking of the people who made it. Not in the way of a horror movie, with its familiar demands of screaming and startling and reacting to things that aren't there, but something more searching than that. The Exorcist asked its cast to inhabit a world where faith and doubt and love and terror are all pressing against each other at once. It asked a 14-year-old girl to carry one of the most physically and emotionally demanding roles in cinema history. It asked a playwright at the peak of his career to give himself to a film camera. It asked a Swedish actor of international stature to spend weeks buried under makeup, playing a man summoned to face something he had already faced once before. It asked a woman who had just won one of the greatest prizes in cinema to go back in front of the camera and play a mother coming apart at the seams. None of these were easy things, and none of them were small. The film did not leave them unchanged. Some went on to the highest honors their profession offers. Some carried the weight of that one role for the rest of their lives, in ways both expected and unexpected. Some stepped away from the spotlight entirely and found purpose in quieter things, in the theater, in animal rescue, in education, in the kind of work that doesn't generate headlines. One never got to see the finished film. What they all share is a place in something that genuinely mattered, a film that unsettled its era, that people still find themselves thinking about in the dark 53 years later. That kind of staying power doesn't happen by accident. It comes from people who were committed to something real. If this video brought back some memories, or taught you something you didn't know about the people behind those performances, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. It helps us more than you might think, and it means we can keep making videos just like this one. Drop a comment below with any stories we may have missed. We'd love to hear from you. We'll see you in the next one.